The official letter felt cold in my hand, heavier than stone, heavier than any fear I'd faced in the sterile white rooms. It wasn't just paper. It was the sound of a door slamming shut, the taste of ash, the final, undeniable proof that the fire I'd started had consumed exactly what it was meant to. Condemned. The word itself felt like a judgment, not just on a building, but on everything built inside it, everything it represented. My breath hitched, not from fear this time, but from a cold, quiet satisfaction that settled deep in my chest, like a dormant thing finally waking. Outside, the city hummed its indifferent tune, oblivious to the tiny, calculated implosion happening in my universe, sparked by this single, damning word. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Life before felt warm, like a comfortable blanket on a Sunday morning. We had plans. Simple ones, maybe, but they were ours. A little house in the suburbs, not fancy, but it had a garden I loved. Weekends spent tinkering, him fixing things, me coaxing life out of the soil. His name is Mark. He was my constant. Steady. Dependable. Or so I believed. We talked about the future endlessly, kids maybe, travel someday, growing old in that little house. We'd sit on the porch swing in the evenings, the scent of honeysuckle heavy in the air, and just talk. Hours would melt away. He'd hold my hand, his thumb tracing lazy circles on my skin, and I'd feel utterly safe. Protected. Like nothing bad could ever touch us. We got the life insurance policy years ago. It was just. Responsible. Something adults do. Sit down with an agent, sign some papers, talk in hushed tones about unthinkable worst-case scenarios, then file it away and forget about it. It was protection. For each other, yes, but mostly, we framed it as protection for the future we were building. If something happened to one of us, the other would be okay. The house would be paid off. Dreams wouldn't have to die. It was a safety net woven from possibility and love. Mark handled most of the paperwork. He was always better with that stuff. Practical. Detail-oriented. I trusted him implicitly. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. My best friend. My rock. Then the world tilted. Not a gentle shift, but a violent, sickening lurch. The diagnosis came like a punch to the gut. Sharp, sudden, stealing the air from my lungs. Stage 4. The words echoed in the sterile doctor's office, bouncing off the walls, lodging themselves in my skull. Everything stopped. The future dissolved. The garden, the porch swing, the lazy Sundays, they all receded, replaced by a terrifying, all-consuming present defined by fear and uncertainty. Mark was there. He held my hand, his grip tight. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own. He talked to the doctors, asked the questions I couldn't articulate through the haze of panic. He seemed devastated. Supportive. We'll fight this, he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. Together. We'll get through this. I clung to his words, to his presence. He was my anchor in the storm. The insurance policy became a lifeline, not because I expected to. Well, to need it in the final sense, but because the treatments were brutal, experimental, expensive. Our savings dwindled fast. Mark brought up the policy. It's what it's there for, he said. To take care of you. To make sure you have everything you need, no matter what. He talked about activating a portion of it, accessing funds early to cover the escalating medical costs, maybe bring in extra help if needed. It made sense. It was practical. It was him being responsible, taking care of things while I was too weak, too scared, too focused on just breathing. He handled the claim. All of it. The phone calls, the forms, the back and forth with the insurance company. I was in and out of the hospital, weak from chemo, my body a battlefield. My hair fell out, my skin was sallow, I lost weight. I was a ghost of myself. Trusting him to manage the finances, to manage this, felt like the only thing I could do. He'd give me updates, brief summaries. Money was coming in, enough to cover things. Not to worry my head about it, just focus on getting better. His voice was soothing, reassuring. He was my protector. The early days of treatment were a blur of pain and nausea. Hospitals smelled of disinfectant and despair. Every day was a fight just to lift my head, to keep food down, to believe there was a tomorrow. Mark was there, mostly. He'd sit by my bedside, hold my hand, talk about mundane things from the outside world, the weather, a silly story from work, updates on the garden. Sometimes he seemed distracted, his phone buzzing constantly. I'd ask about it, and he'd just shrug. Work stuff. Don't worry, and I didn't. How could I? My world had shrunk to the four walls of my hospital room, the beeping of machines, the relentless cycle of illness and treatment. There were times I felt utterly alone, even with him sitting right there. He'd leave frequently for errands or work emergencies. I'd lie there, too weak to even pick up a glass of water, watching the ceiling tiles, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. But then he'd come back, full of apologies, bringing flowers or a book, and I'd scold myself for being paranoid. He was under immense stress, I reasoned, caring for a sick wife, managing everything. It was unfair to expect him to be here every second. He was human. He was doing his best. I pushed the doubts down. Trust was paramount when your life felt like it was slipping through your fingers. The treatments continued, a brutal cycle of hope and despair. There were good days, flashes of energy, followed by crushing waves of exhaustion. My body was a ruin, but my spirit clung fiercely to the possibility of survival. Mark started talking more about the future again, but it felt different. Less ours, more theoretical. He'd talk about investments, opportunities, things that needed to be taken care of with the insurance money. He was being proactive, I thought. Planning ahead. Making sure we were secure after all this was over. The money was significant. More than I'd ever imagined. It was supposed to be for rebuilding, for compensating for lost time, for ensuring our financial stability after the storm. As I slowly started to recover, the physical pain lessened, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. The exhaustion lingered, a heavy cloak I couldn't shake off. But my mind started to clear. The fog began to lift. And with clarity came questions. Where exactly did that money go? How much was there? Mark became evasive when I asked for specifics. It's handled, he'd say, waving a hand dismissively. All invested safely. Don't you worry, but the house felt different. Less cozy, more like a place he just came back to. His absences grew longer, less explained. He stopped talking about the garden, about the porch swing. He started dressing differently, newer clothes, expensive shoes. He smelled different too, a perfume that wasn't mine, a scent clinging faintly to his shirts. The unease solidified into suspicion. I started noticing things. Small things at first. Receipts for places I didn't recognize. Calls he'd taken in the other room, his voice low. A new energy about him, but it wasn't the relief of my recovery. It felt separate. Exciting. Like he was living a life I wasn't a part of. And then came the whispers. Not direct accusations, but veiled comments from mutual acquaintances, questions about Mark's new project, his business venture. A business venture? He worked in finance. He wasn't an entrepreneur. The first crack in the facade came with a misplaced phone bill, tucked under a cushion, forgotten. I hesitated for a long time before picking it up. My heart hammered against my ribs. This felt wrong, invasive. But the gnawing fear, the certainty that something was terribly wrong, finally outweighed my reluctance. I opened it. My eyes scanned the numbers, the times, the duration of calls. One number appeared again and again. Day and night. Long calls. Too long for a colleague. Too frequent for a friend. I typed the number into Google. It led to a name. A woman's name. And then a picture. A smiling face I'd never seen before. Young. Vibrant. Full of a life I felt had been stolen from me. My stomach churned. This couldn't be. Just a friend. Not with the frequency and length of those calls. The scent on his shirts clicked into place. The excuses, the absences. They weren't about work. They weren't about the stress of my illness. They were about her. The affair was a betrayal, a cruel twist of the knife, when I was at my most vulnerable. It hurt with a physical ache, a pain that rivaled the deepest bone pain from the chemo. But the full depth of the horror, the real, gut-wrenching violation, came later. After I confronted him about her. He didn't deny it. Not really. He crumbled, offered weak excuses about loneliness, stress, about her being just a friend who understood lies. Pathetic, transparent lies. The affair was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was the financial betrayal. The money. My money. Finding the truth about the insurance payout felt like falling into a black hole. He had accessed the bulk of it. Not just a portion for medical expenses. Almost all of it. And it wasn't in safe investments. It was gone. Funneled out. When I demanded to know where, who, he finally broke. Confessed in a torrent of pathetic self-pity. The money, my money, the safety net meant to catch me if I fell, to rebuild my life if I survived, had been used to fund her dream. A bakery. A quaint, charming little bakery in a trendy part of town. Her passion project. Her fresh start. Paid for with the funds designated for my survival. The sheer, audacious cruelty of it stole my breath. While I was fighting for my life, piece by piece, cell by cell, while I was wasting away, trusting him with everything, he was taking the money meant for my future and building a future with her. A future filled with the smell of baking bread and sweet pastries, a life utterly devoid of the pain and struggle that had secured their foundation. It was the ultimate betrayal, a perversion of trust so profound it left me speechless, numb. The affair was a wound. Using the insurance money for her bakery was gutting me with a rusty spoon. I remember standing in the middle of the living room, the room where we'd made plans, where he'd held my hand and promised forever, and feeling utterly cold. The warmth was gone. The blanket was gone. Everything was ash. He was babbling, crying, trying to justify, to explain, to somehow make this monstrous act less monstrous. But there were no words that could shrink what he had done. He had gambled on my potential death, used my vulnerability, and built a monument to his infidelity and greed with the very resources meant to protect me. Despair was a heavy weight. For days, maybe weeks, I barely moved. The physical exhaustion from the illness was nothing compared to this soul-deep weariness. I had survived cancer only to be poisoned by the one person I trusted most. The future I thought I was fighting for was gone. Not just the house, the money, the abstract concept of security, but the fundamental belief in the person I shared my life with. The man I loved didn't exist. He was a character in a story I'd made up. My family, my friends urged me to leave him, to take what was left, if anything, and start over. But the idea of starting over felt impossible. How do you start over when the ground beneath you has been vaporized? The financial reality was stark. The money was tied up in the bakery, an asset I had no legal claim to, registered in her name, funded by funds he had technically managed. Legal battles felt overwhelming, expensive, and uncertain, especially in my fragile state. He and she thought they were untouchable. They had the asset, the legal distance, and they clearly believed I was too weak, too defeated, to fight back effectively. They expected me to just go away, lick my wounds, die quietly, metaphorically if not literally. That thought was the spark, the turning point.
Discreetly?
After everything my body had endured, after fighting tooth and nail against a disease that tried to consume me from the inside out,
No.
a fierce, cold anger began to coil in my gut. It wasn't the hot, messy rage of a hurt lover. It was the calculated fury of a survivor. The illness had taught me resilience. It had taught me to focus, to break down an insurmountable problem into manageable steps, to fight relentlessly even when the odds were stacked against me. They thought I was weak. They thought I was done. They thought I was just a grieving wife they could discard after stealing her future. They were wrong. My recovery wasn't linear. There were still days when I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But with the anger came a new kind of energy. Focused. Relentless. I couldn't take back the money, not easily anyway. I couldn't erase the betrayal. But I could target the symbol of their victory. The bakery. Their dream. Built on my potential death. It had to fall. I couldn't storm in and demand the money back. That was his game, his territory. I needed to find a different way. A way that used their actions, their mistakes, against them. A way that was quiet, bureaucratic, and utterly devastating. I needed leverage. Something undeniable. Something that bypassed the emotional mess and hit them in the practical, financial reality they seemed to value above all else. I started researching. Not legal precedents, but municipal codes. Building permits. Health regulations. Commercial property laws. Everything I could find about opening and running a business like a bakery. It was tedious, dense reading, but I approached it like studying for a final exam I couldn't afford to fail. I learned about zoning, fire codes, plumbing requirements, ventilation standards, food handling regulations. I started visiting the area where the bakery was located. At first, I just drove by. A small, charming storefront. Freshly painted. A pretty awning. People queuing outside. It looked successful. Thriving. A constant, painful reminder of what had been stolen. It fueled my resolve. Then I got bolder. I parked down the street and just watched. Observed. How did they operate? What were the deliveries like? Who came and went? I noticed things. The state of the back alley. The ventilation fan that seemed too small. The way the trash bins were handled. Small details that might be violations. I needed specifics. Concrete evidence. This wasn't just about getting back at them. It was about dismantling the physical manifestation of their betrayal through legitimate means. I couldn't afford mistakes. I needed to build a case that the city couldn't ignore. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, observations. I took pictures with my phone, discreetly, of things that looked questionable. Overflowing dumpsters, questionable wiring visible from an alley, condensation issues around exhaust vents. I looked up public records. Permits filed for the renovation. Were they all in order? Were inspections passed? This took time. Patience. Something the illness had taught me in abundance. I discovered delays in permit approvals, notes about issues that were supposed to be resolved. Minor things, maybe, but cumulative. The building itself was old. Renovating an old building to meet modern commercial codes, especially for a food business, is complex. There are always shortcuts taken, things missed, corners cut to save money or time. And they had been in a hurry, hadn't they? Eager to get her dream up and running, fueled by my life insurance money. I started making calls. Anonymous calls at first. To the city planning department, the health department, building and safety. Asking hypothetical questions. Poking around. Learning the process for filing complaints. What kind of evidence was needed? Who handled what? I learned about inspectors, their schedules, their focus areas. It was a whole world of bureaucracy, slow-moving and seemingly indifferent, but armed with the power to shut things down if the rules were broken. My focus narrowed. I noticed persistent issues with their plumbing drain in the alley, often pooling, smelling faintly of grease. A potential health code violation. The ventilation system seemed inadequate for a bakery of that size, especially the ovens. Fire hazard? Air quality issue? I honed in on these, the seemingly mundane details that could hide significant noncompliance. I compiled my evidence. The photos, the dates, the notes on permit issues. I researched the specific city ordinances they were likely violating. I cross-referenced everything. I built a dossier. It felt clinical, detached, and powerful. This wasn't emotional revenge. This was strategic dismantling. Then came the decision. I wouldn't confront them directly with my findings. That would give them a chance to fix things, to bribe, to smooth things over. I needed the city to act. I needed the force of law and bureaucracy to do the work. I filed the complaints. Not just one, but several. To different departments. Health, building and safety, environmental services. I submitted my documentation, anonymous at first, then following up with slightly more official inquiries under a pseudonym, just enough to ensure my reports weren't dismissed out of hand. I knew the system was slow. I knew it would take time. But I had nothing but time. Time the illness had nearly stolen, time they had used to build their life on my ruins. Now time was my weapon. I waited. Every day was a quiet exercise in patience. I imagined inspectors arriving, asking questions, looking behind the shiny facade. I pictured them finding the faulty plumbing, the inadequate ventilation, the missing permits for altered structures. I visualized the official notices being posted, the violations stacking up. During this time, Mark continued his life with her. He was less secretive now, bolder. He clearly thought I was defeated. He'd talk about the bakery, how well it was doing, how happy she was. Sometimes, a flicker of guilt would cross his face, but mostly there was just a smugness, the air of someone who had gotten away with something. He even started talking about selling the house, my house, the house we'd build a life in, to free up capital. His audacity was breathtaking. He was already planning to cash out the last remaining asset of our shared life, no doubt to further solidify his new one with her. The thought solidified my resolve, if it even needed solidifying. Then, the first sign that my plan was working. A public record search, something I checked religiously, showed a recent inspection had occurred at the bakery address. Followed by another. And another. Different departments. My heart started to beat a little faster. They were acting. The wheels were turning. I kept quiet. I didn't hint at what I had done. I let them live in their bubble of success, in the belief that they were safe. Let them invest more, plan more, grow more attached to the thing I was systematically undermining. The longer they felt secure, the greater the fall would be. Weeks turned into months. I was regaining my strength, physically and mentally. The anger had cooled into a sharp, clear focus. I was building a new life, piece by piece, independent of Mark and his betrayal. I was going back to work part-time, reconnecting with friends, finding joy in small things again. But the bakery was still there, a shadow over my recovery, a constant reminder of the price of their happiness. Then came the day I received the letter. The one I held in my hand at the beginning of this story. It wasn't addressed to me, not officially. It was a public notice, a copy sent to surrounding properties, detailing the findings of multiple inspections at the bakery's address. Health code violations. Building code violations. Unresolved permit issues from the renovation. Failure to comply with correction orders. And the final, damning sentence. Order of condemnation. Immediate action required. Business closure until all violations are corrected and reinspection is passed. The cost and complexity of the required work were staggering, effectively making the current operation impossible. I read it sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where Mark and I had shared countless meals, countless conversations about our future. The silence in the house was profound. No triumph, no cheating. Just a deep, quiet exhale. It was done. I didn't call him. I didn't need to. I knew how he would find out. How they would find out. A notice on the door. An inspector barring entry. A phone call from a panic supplier. The sudden, irreversible halt to their operation. Later that day, my phone rang. It was Mark. His voice was frantic, bordering on hysterical. Have you heard? About the bakery? It shut down. Condemned. They're saying. Violations. Massive violations. How could this happen? I listened, silent for a long moment. The dry humor of the universe wasn't lost on me. He was asking me how this could happen? He, who had built his mistress's dream on the money meant to save me, was blindsided by bureaucratic reality. He expected a weeping, broken wife. He got the quiet architect of his undoing. Yes, Mark, I finally said, my voice low, calm. I heard. But
How?
we had permits. Sort of. We fixed things. His panic was palpable. Who would do this?
Who would report us like this?
And with so much detail, he was fishing, trying to understand the source of the attack, trying to attribute it to a disgruntled employee, a competitor, anyone but the woman he had left for dead. I took a slow breath. This was the moment. The plot twist. The reveal that he was hoisted by his own petard, brought down not by my emotional breakdown, but by my calculated, cold-blooded use of their own weaknesses. Maybe, I said softly, choosing my words with deliberate precision, maybe it was someone who had a vested interest in the funds that paid for that bakery. Someone who knew where the money came from. Someone who had plenty of time, lying in a hospital bed, thinking. Plenty of time, recovering, putting the pieces together. Someone who understands that paper trails, building codes, and health regulations can be far more powerful than emotions. Silence. Absolute, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his breath hitch. He was putting it together. The quiet wife. The illness she survived. The money he took. The business he built. The sudden, inexplicable appearance of detailed, irrefutable violations. He hadn't just been caught in an affair. He'd been outmaneuvered, checkmated by the very person he had underestimated and betrayed. You, he finally whispered, the single word laced with disbelief, shock, and a dawning, horrible realization. Me? I confirmed. My voice was steady. There was no shouting, no triumph. Just the quiet assertion of truth. Funny, isn't it? The money meant to save my life ended up condemning yours. Or, at least, the one you built with her. Guess the universe has a twisted sense of humor. He started to stammer, to rage, to beg. But his words were just noise. The sound of his carefully constructed world collapsing. I didn't need to hear it. I had delivered the final blow, not with a scream, but with a quiet truth and a stack of city documents. I hung up the phone. The silence returned, but it was different now. Not heavy with despair, but light with a strange, complex peace. The bakery was condemned. Her dream, built on my loss, was rubble, metaphorically speaking. The money was still gone, yes. I would likely never recover it all. That loss was permanent. But I had reclaimed something far more valuable. My power. My agency. My ability to fight back, not as a victim, but as a force to be reckoned with. The aftermath wasn't a movie scene of dancing in the streets. It was quieter. Mark tried to fight the condemnation, of course. Hired lawyers. Tried to fix things. But the violations were extensive, the costs prohibitive, the city unyielding once the process had begun. His mistress was furious, their relationship fracturing under the pressure and financial ruin. I heard things through the grapevine. Arguments.
Blame.
The shiny new life they had built together quickly corroded. The bakery never reopened. It sat there, empty, a monument to their greed and my resilience. My life moved forward. The little house held too many ghosts, too many memories, good and bad. I sold it. Used the modest proceeds to find a small apartment, a clean slate. I continued my recovery, focusing on my health, rebuilding my career. The scar of the betrayal remained, a phantom ache, a reminder of how deeply misplaced trust could wound. The money was a hard lesson learned, a brutal tuition fee in the school of human nature. But the victory wasn't about the money. It was about proving to myself and to them that I was not disposable, that my life, my future, had value, that surviving wasn't just about enduring illness. It was about refusing to be defined or defeated by the actions of others. I had faced death and walked away. Facing their betrayal and dismantling their edifice felt, in a strange way, like a final, necessary step in claiming my life back. Sometimes I drive by where the bakery used to be. It's a different store now. The scent of pastries is gone, replaced by something else entirely. The physical reminder is gone, but the memory lingers. It's not a bitter memory anymore, though. It's a quiet reminder of my strength, of the hidden power in unexpected places, of the fact that sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't loud or violent, but quiet, patient, and armed with nothing but truth and paperwork. I lost a marriage, a home, a significant amount of money. But I found my fire again, and that was worth more than all the gold in the world. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.